actually, every time I try to find this study, I have trouble finding it. I'll put it in the show notes. But I like went through it really, like methodically for the work we
Mhm.
were doing on colostrum, and it's just it's like basically you pull 500. I can't even remember the amount of people. That's terrible. I should
Right.
try to find this. It's like a small clinical trial, survey based, a couple
And
hundred
so
people.
survey-based like studies are very unreliable. Like I
Yeah, it
feel like
was.
people should know that. It's because you're just judging it based on the person what they're reporting to you, kind of their, I guess, subjective like thoughts about it, and then like whether they even remember accurately. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
or
we
maybe
forget
they
things.
increased protein in their diet as a whole, or they started
Right.
exercising, or they were drinking more. Who knows? Like what there were
Yeah.
no controls, for
Mhm.
other inputs. So it's a very hyped up marketing campaign for a substance though that does have some really positive effects. Welcome to Influence to Death, your guide for navigating the wild world of wellness influencing.
Loosey goosey.
Perfect.
Oh,
We're keeping it loose today. Welcome to Influence to Death. I'm Victoria Lafont.
I'm Hannah Wright. And today we're doing a fun episode where we just kind of talk about a few super duper trendy health things that we see circulating. And today we're going to cover methylene blue, colostrum, and then touch on, well, I guess it's kind of a combination, collagen supplements, and then
Cottage cheese.
cottage cheese protein kind of lumped together.
Yeah.
So,
This is what I was telling you is but I had to silence Slack messages. People, I think they don't understand the amount of dinging that happens. I didn't realize it until you start to record a podcast, and then you're like, wow, my phone, my computer, any social media, like everything is dinging.
so I always have since I had my son, I've silenced everything. So it's been 5 years, all of my notifications. So I can't do it. But
Listen,
I
I've
remember that.
never, if I had to make a bet about who to call, if like my life was on the line, I would never
Mhm.
call Andrew, my husband, because he has never picked up the phone in 10 years. Because the same, he's like, my nervous system is going to catch on fire
Yeah.
if I let this ring. Um, yeah, what I was going to tell you though is I emailed Chris Masterjohn. He's
Oh,
somebody that we're
cool.
going to touch on today, talking about methylene blue. He just published, it was a Substack article. I had a free Substack article
Hmm.
about his understanding of methylene blue, because he is a biochemist
Hmm.
and we're not. I was reading his article and
Right.
I was like, wow, I love biochemistry, but like I am not a biochemist.
Oh, it
But I
makes your
just,
brain just, I'm like, I'm trying to understand so hard.
yeah, I remember reading. I actually had to get out my biochemistry textbook the other day to look up, God, what I was looking up vitamin K for one of our clients. And I was like, oh, it's so cool. But I could feel those parts of my brain being like, taking the
Yeah.
rust off. So yeah, I asked him if he wants to come on and talk about methylene blue. So Chris, we know you're a listener.
He
I
doesn't know who we are.
doubt Chris Masterjohn is listening to our podcast, but if you are, we'd like to have you on to explain your understanding of the biochemistry of methylene blue.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're just going to keep it loose today. I've been listening to other podcasts that I love, and it's like they are kind of like conversational. And I feel like maybe just because for me, it's like feeling new and a little like maybe insecure about this still. I'm like, we
Hmm.
have to keep to the schedule so
Yeah.
strong.
I mean, we don't really know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just kind of doing it. So, like, maybe we'll find a format that is different from our original format that works better, or people like, or I don't know, whatever. But
I still love our history bias research takeaway format. I think that's awesome. But
yeah, same. Uh, so, with that said, should we just jump right in? I guess we're just going to cover kind of each topic
a little bit, yeah.
and the research that we pulled up, and kind of just give a general overview for anyone interested in those supplements.
Yeah, it's like a little sample. It's an hors d'oeuvre platter today. I just want to remind people where to find us. So you can find us on Instagram at Influence to Death. You can email us, influencetodeath@gmail.com. We love hearing from you and hearing about the topics that you want us to cover. We don't know what we're doing as podcasters, but we do know what we're doing as, I would say, citizen scientists. That's what I would call us. So if you listen to this podcast and you like it, please leave us a review, follow us, share it with your friends. And you can become a subscriber for $5 and up a month, and you get one extra podcast episode a month. This month, we're going to review Apple Cider Vinegar on Netflix, which my mother-in-law the other day was like, have you seen this movie? She was like, you have to watch this. So I was like, perfect. It's like it's based on a true story, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess they've dramatized it a little bit on influencer culture and how it can go a little too far.
Yeah. I haven't watched it yet. I'm nervous.
Me too.
I'm nervous to watch it.
Hannah, this morning I was just looking at reels on Methylene Blue. I like went down because I don't know much about it. I was like, what's the deal? I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
So can we start with that one first?
Yes,
because
please.
I agree. I did not know very much about methylene blue at all, but I know that it has been really trendy in kind of like the functional medicine subculture and like, biohacking culture. And since what's his face had the picture of him taking it on the airplane.
Yeah, RFK.
RFK, yeah. I anticipate that it'll probably be more trendy. So I went in kind of not knowing very much. The first thing I did was I listened to some podcasts last night when I was on my walk because I was curious how it's being kind of like talked about. And I will say that if all I did was listen to the short podcasts that I did, produced by, I think a lot of them are like health influencers. They're like the top ranking podcasts, I think, because it came up first on my Apple search.
When you just searched methylene blue and then
yeah, I would be like, oh, I'm ordering methylene blue. Like I'm getting some because this sounds like, why wouldn't you take it? Yeah. It's helping your mitochondria. And then that's not accurate. So let's just talk about it. First thing, I want to talk about what is it?
Yeah.
Like what actually is methylene blue? Super fascinating history to me, at least.
Me too.
So it's actually was developed as a synthetic dye and used in the textile industry. I guess technical name is methylone. Hold on. Methylthioninium chloride. So it's a type of salt. It was developed in 1876. And then later, around 1890, it's known for basically, it's like essentially the first synthetic drug in medical history. It has antiseptic and antimicrobial properties. And it was the first synthetic antiseptic used kind of like an antibiotic compound before penicillin was developed. In 1891, they started using it as an anti-malarial medicine. It's very, very effective at that. And during World War II, it was used to treat malaria in the Allied military. And I found this fun paper called Lest We Forget You, Methylene Blue, published in 2011 in Neurobiology of Aging journal, where they kind of talk about the history. And apparently, even though it was really effective at preventing malaria, nobody wanted to take it because it turns your pee blue. It can also turn fun. Yeah. But the guys are like in the army were like, we don't want that. And so they developed this very clever rhyme, which they put in the paper. Even at the loo we see, we pee navy blue. So I don't know.
They influence them.
Bizarre.
That's marketing. Yeah. That's a marketing strategy right there.
So yeah, that's kind of its history. And up until more recently, like that was what it was used for, except for it's actually one approved indication is for a disease called methaglobinemia. Yeah,
I can't. I've just looked at it and read it, but I don't think I would be able to pronounce it.
Yeah, so even back, I think in the 40s, 50s, 60s, they were using it for that. They figured out they could use it for that. I find it fascinating, like how you figure that out. Like how do you figure out that this thing that was a textile dye, and then you're like, oh, well, when we use it maybe to stain like cells or fungus under a microscope, it like kills it. So maybe we can use it for, to treat malaria. And then from there going on to say, oh, we could use it to treat this blood disorder,
right?
Where you don't get enough oxygen in your, in your body. It's so cool.
In that paper, the Lest We Forget You, Methylene Blue, it's a recent paper. It's like from 2010. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
recent.
it's not that old, yeah.
In my mind, it's still like 2012. Okay, it's a couple years old. But I think, do they talk about kind of the progression of how
Not really, just a little bit.
I wonder, there's
It's
another paper that I found, Hannah, that this might be the one. I have so many tabs open on my computer at this point. It talks about how it is a alternative mitochondrial electron transfer,
yes.
like how we're
Oh
going to
yeah,
talk
so
about
I'm
it.
gonna go. Yeah, yeah. So
I think
first, I
in
wanted
that
to.
paper they talk about like it was a dye and then they like noticed something, but
Right. It's just cool to me that people figure that stuff out. Like
yeah, it's
the just brilliance that humans have. I just love
yeah,
it so much.
yeah.
So methylene blue, we know kind of what it is. It is a synthetic compound. What it does mainly is that it reduces the oxidized form of hemoglobin when someone has methaglobinemia, which is a blood disorder that affects how your red blood cells deliver oxygen throughout the body. So it doesn't work very well and your tissues don't get enough oxygen. Oh
Mhm.
gosh, can you hear that? That was my
That's so
notification.
funny that we were just talking about the notifications. Oh my god, we have to leave that in.
No one ever
Perfect.
calls me ever. That's wild. Okay, I don't even know how to turn my thing off. Do not disturb. Okay.
It's all like in most episodes, I swear to God, I'm like ding, I'm like a Christmas tree over here. So
Okay, so for people who have that blood disorder, when they take methylene blue, it helps their blood cells like carry oxygen, basically.
Mhm.
So it increases the oxygen binding capacity of hemoglobin, and then you get oxygen in your body. So if you
Mhm.
have that disorder, it's like the one treatment for it, and it's very effective. Um, and that's the only FDA approved
Yeah.
indication for methylene blue.
Yeah.
And if you had that disorder, which it can be genetic, but also acquired. So the genetic component, this is, Victoria found this. And I remember
Because I'm just
learning about
drawn
this.
to my people. That's why.
Yeah, this case a really long time ago, the Blue People of Kentucky. Has anyone heard of that? I don't know. My part of my family is in a small town in Kentucky and kind of near Hazard County where these people are from. But the Blue People of Kentucky were the Fugates, I think. You can Google it. You can find pictures of them. There's all kinds of interesting, um, websites,
Anecdotes.
shows,
Yeah.
and yeah, reports on the history of these people. Some photos that I'm pretty sure are doctored. I'm not sure.
Mm.
Anyways, because they were kind of in a small town, they were probably having kids with people who were distant relatives. And so, because of that reason, this gene kind of stayed around and
Mhm.
they turned blue. And it's cyanosis. It's when you aren't getting enough oxygen. And so, like, your fingertips will turn blue, your lips might turn kind of blue. But apparently, these people were very blue until a doctor came around and he was like, "Oh, I can treat you." This hematologist, he's like, "Here's some methylene blue," and it worked. And there is a paper from the 60s about that in the archives of internal medicine, I believe, that kind of talks about the genes involved, the biochemical pathways. It's very sciencey. I didn't read all of it because it was really boring. I'm just
Because
gonna be
we
honest.
have other jobs. That's so, Hannah, when I was a kid, we just learned about like the blue people in the hollers.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
said it very gracefully, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, but that is okay. This is the wild part to me. They're blue because it's, how do you say it? Cyanosis.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're
I
not
think.
getting enough oxygen. I mean, it's
Mhm.
like, you turn blue, your lips turn blue when you get cold. Same, same. It's blue. Like the thing that helps them is blue. I don't know. Like I want people to understand like that's a coincidence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When oxygen hits this compound, methylene blue, like how she was describing the redox properties of it, it is blue. Like I can just imagine like somebody who is in a holler in Eastern Kentucky and I mean, and they're like, "Oh, take this blue thing; it's going to cure your blue disease." I would be like, "Absolutely not." It's so counterintuitive, but I mean, that is
Yeah.
fascinating.
It really is. If you would know if you had that
Yeah.
disease. You would know.
Oh my
Um,
god, people are going to be like, "Do I have the blue disease?"
yeah, you would know if you had it. Like I said, there's people who have it. It's a very rare, like, genetic thing, so it can be inherited. But then also, you can get it from acute exposure to a toxicant.
Right.
So from things like pesticide exposure, some pharmaceuticals that contain nitrates, then like recreational drug use, nitrous oxide or poppers, it can turn you, yeah, you
No
can have,
shit.
yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
I'm not, yeah,
I
yes,
also have a story.
that is accurate and that does happen. I'm not going to say how I know that, but
Oh my god, you've seen that though. I mean, it's like
yeah,
it's just, if people have ever been to a field party, maybe it's
yeah.
just where we grew up, Hannah.
And
People would take nitrous oxide and put it into balloons and then you inhale. I'm not I was too scared of drugs because I've always had a heart palpitation, so I never messed with it. But
oh yeah, yeah,
you
that's
like
probably good.
see people do that and then it basically kind of gives you this like heady
Mhm.
high.
And if you do enough, you will like lose consciousness for a while and you do turn blue. So, yeah, that does happen. So for people who have that acute exposure and it's making them sick, methylene blue is a treatment option.
I know some old party friends I'm gonna have to call. Be like, hey, that thing RFK took on the airplane, that is actually good for you right now. You should take it.
um, Worthwhile to note that vitamin C is also effective at treating methylglobinemia, and
Mhm.
so is B2. So,
Which
um,
makes sense when you learn about the nutrient dependency of the electron transport chain.
yes, which I want to talk about too. So I think it's kind of cool what methylene blue kind of does. So like we hear about, well, at least I think in like the pop culture, like in influencers, they're like, oh, it boosts your mitochondria and it like supercharges it. It makes you like this superhuman, you can perform better. You can like perform with less oxygen. I guess that's why RFK was taking it on the airplane because you
Right.
have less oxygen.
Mhm.
But it doesn't actually do that. What
Mhm.
it does is it kind of rewires or like jumps in to support various stages of the electron transport chain, also called the mitochondrial respiratory chain, how your mitochondria make ATP, which is the energy that all of your cells need to do what they have to do and survive,
Yeah.
and live and thrive. So it kind of has this really cool and I think super unique. I don't really know a lot about that deep level of biochemistry to know if there are many things that do what methylene blue does. It's
Mhm.
an electron donor and an electron acceptor, which means it can reduce and oxidize kind of willy nilly almost. Like I
Like
think
an
it can just go back and
adaptogen
forth.
or
Yeah, like
something.
adapts. And apparently, you can actually see it do this. If you have a bottle of methylene blue and you open and expose it to oxygen, it'll change color, it'll change white, and then change back to blue. I don't know. I've just heard people talk about that,
Yeah,
but
depending
that
on if
is
it's exposed to
just
oxygen, it
so
changes.
cool. And
It's
then I
wild.
guess when you take it, so usually if you have methylglobinemia, I think they give it to you intravenously,
Yeah.
like through an IV, and it goes, straight into your bloodstream. I think it's easier for it to reach all your tissues and your nervous system that way. But usually as a supplement, like a health supplement, people take it orally. And
Mhm.
I'm really
Mhm.
curious about how it acts in the digestive system and like, it's really interesting.
It
I
is.
don't have an answer for that. I'm just wondering. So if anybody knows, please explain it to us.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Chris Masterjohn comes on because I think he's got the biochemical chops to like really break this down. And I mean, I don't at all.
Yeah. So according to him and his research, um, taking methylene blue as a general mitochondrial supplement is not recommended, and it could potentially be harmful long term because it might reduce your own mitochondrial efficiency, like what your body just does naturally. And you don't
Mhm.
want to do that because mitochondrial dysfunction is a root cause of many chronic diseases. You don't want to give your body something that makes that happen, if you don't need it. I mean, most people don't need methylene blue based on what I've read. I
Yeah.
will say that there are some off-label uses, for it. One is Alzheimer's disease. This is like where the bulk of the research seems to lie. A 2023 meta-analysis of 6 randomized control trials summarized that 5 of the 6 randomized control trials, which are the majority of them, showed that people with Alzheimer's who took methylene blue had reduced beta amyloid plaque and improved cognitive function. So I think research in that area is ongoing. Um,
Mhm.
that would be maybe if that was something I was looking into for like a family member or something, I would want to research that. And
Yeah.
then also work with like a provider who knows their shit and like
Really well.
knows,
Yeah.
yeah, because the dosing is important. The duration is probably really important. There's other things that it may be useful for. Some, they're kind of like more rare. So one is vasoplegic syndrome, which is like a shock that can happen to your body during heart surgery. It's also, of course, used as a dye to stain tissues and your like lymph nodes or your parathyroid glands if they're like looking for cancer or going to do surgery or something like that. It's also still used for the parasite that can cause malaria, Plasmodium falciparum, I think is how you say it.
It lives in the
If it's
mosquito, right? That little thing.
Yeah, and I guess it can become resistant to the other malarial medications, so they
Yeah, the artemisian based
will still
medicines.
use, yeah, methylene blue if they have to. They can also use it for treating central nervous system toxicity from a chemotherapy drug called a phosphamide.
Phosphomide,
Um,
yeah.
and then I think also for cyanide poisoning,
That makes
it's
sense, right?
indicated for
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
because I think it binds and prevents cyanide from binding to parts of the cell or something like that. Um,
Yeah, that's I'm like with science, I don't know the mechanism. It's I mean, it seems like as we were reading about methylene blue, there's like multiple different mechanisms.
yeah,
So, and again, yeah, guys, we're
it's
not biochemists.
but it's just like this thing that was developed as a textile dye
Yeah.
has these crazy functions
Hmm.
for your mitochondria, for your electron transport chain, for your cells, and that's just wild. So cool.
I found this little passage. It was this other study because when I looked at Chris Masterjohn's Substack, I was like, I just want to know. I don't know if he has citations on there. I didn't look close enough to see, but I was like, I want to see other information about the effects of methylene blue on the
Hmm.
electron transport chain. And so I just found, this paper that kind of gave some information about it. But this is where I heard this in the 1890s. Methylene blue was administered in psychiatric patients to monitor their compliance. So essentially, just to make sure that they were taking their medications because you could see if they pee blue, or I mean, I wonder if there were any other, they didn't say like what
Okay.
exact sign they were looking at, but it was just a tracer to monitor compliance. But then that led to the discovery of its antipsychotic effects and the
Yes.
later discovery of chlorpromazine, the first synthetic antipsychotic drug. It actually led to the development of that drug. Um,
Whoa, that's wild because it's a MAO inhibitor
okay,
also.
yes, it is.
So this
That's
is the wild thing about it is that it has this very strong effect on serotonin. So
yes.
it acts like an SSRI. And so I don't know how strong it is, but I do know that you cannot take it if you're taking an SSRI
This is
because it can lead to
important.
serotonin
Yeah.
toxicity, which is deadly. Like, so don't
Yes,
mess with
deadly.
that.
You're
Yeah.
exhausted, the eye
Yeah.
symptoms, but that's important to know. Like there are, and whatever the 20 minutes of reels I watched, nobody talked about the contraindications.
Yeah, and how many people are on that type of medication? A lot of people.
Let's
So
Google
like,
how many people in the United States.
yeah, please, for the love of God, do not take methylene blue if you're on an SSRI. So also that makes me wonder if that kind of leads to a kind of placebo. I guess it wouldn't be placebo effect, but basically taking it, it increases serotonin, it makes you feel good. And then you're like, oh, this supplement makes me feel great. My mitochondria must be just working overtime. They're doing so good. And you're kind of using that to like gauge your internal health,
Yeah,
which that's not like,
right. Yeah.
but I wonder, I mean, that's
Yes,
something to
absolutely.
think about.
I
Yeah.
mean, serotonin makes you feel amazing. So according to, this is WebMD, 13% of US adults are on SSRIs. 13.2% is the
Okay.
Center for Disease Control. I mean, that is millions and millions and millions of people. And then also, I think wasn't a contraindication like you can't take it if you're pregnant.
Yes. Yeah, because it can harm fetal development. I don't have specifics on that, but just
Yeah, the
don't mess
toxic.
around with that.
Yeah, I
And then
figured.
if you have a genetic disease called glucose 6 phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency,
Mhm.
that's a disease that affects your red blood cells. You would know if you had that. You don't take it.
Yeah.
So I think that like if you're this is my personal takeaway from all this information. for a healthy person, if they're just like, oh, I want to boost my mitochondria, just make sure that you're like giving yourself the foundational support, which
Exercise.
exercise is a huge one. And then micronutrients, your electron transport chain relies on nutrients and things like B vitamins, folate,
Vitamin C.
iron, copper, vitamin C, selenium,
Totally.
melatonin even. So making sure you're sleeping and your circadian rhythm is functioning well, like you're going to bed at a decent hour, that kind of stuff. That's what I would focus on. If you fall into a category like dementia or Alzheimer's, like risk or family history, and you're like, maybe I should take it, just do your research and like work with somebody who knows what the heck they're talking about, and not somebody from a podcast or like an influencer. Because like I said,
Not us.
myself, not us. And just from my like hour of listening to podcasts about it, I was convinced. I was like, oh, I need methylene blue.
Yeah.
You know, like why wouldn't I take it? And no, I would never take it. I'm not going to take it. So
I have this image in my head. There's this like popular thing now on Instagram where you like turn yourself into a little like action figure. I did it for us, on our last like meme
oh
reel,
yeah,
where I'm like totally want to make one where this like crazed biohackers like lifting weights at the gym and they're just dyed completely blue. Like they've just like put it everywhere in their mouth. I actually saw a video of a guy on Instagram who puts it in his eyeballs. Yeah.
why? Why does he?
Girl, I don't know. And there's one other point. This is interesting, and I did not look at research on this, but if we come back to this, and I hope that we do either on our own or with an expert, is there is an interaction that I have just heard about between methylene blue and red light therapy.
Yes, I was reading about that too. And sorry, I don't wanted to interrupt
No,
you.
that's it. I kind of just know that people talk about that, and we kind of don't have time to dig into it anyway on
Yeah.
this like sampler platter episode. But people are doing that and they're showing it on Instagram. It'd be interesting to see if there's increased in. I don't know what it does. It's interesting to think. I don't know enough about either of those topics to see how they would ever interact.
Right. Yeah, I came across a paper, and because I was looking for harms of methylene blue on mitochondrial function over like long-term use, and I pulled up this paper which was about combining it with red light therapy and kind of actually suggesting that it might be harmful over time. I don't really know enough to say any more than that, but we can put the paper link in there if you want to look at it. And
it would be cool. I've like bugged Ari a little bit to come on our podcast, but Ari Witten he knows a lot about red light and like really the legitimate science behind it, and has like made it his job to interview experts. Cool. And I think he has a very balanced approach to that. It would be cool to have him come on and talk about red light, which seems to be very complex based on, what little I've dug into it with him. Because I think he would maybe understand like the mechanism more. And then if he knows about methylene blue, it'd be cool
that would be cool
to see that. So Ari, also, we know you listen to every episode.
We're making a lot of assumptions today.
We sure are.
Okay, so do you want to move on to colostrum next?
Apropos. Okay, so yeah, colostrum is next. It is everywhere. I mean, are you seeing it in ads like on your social media or in podcasts?
I don't, but for the last, I would say like 4 years, I have people ask me a lot about, excuse me, about it. Should I take this? Usually this very specific and trendy and very expensive supplement that's out there right now. I'm not going to say the name, but you guys all probably know what I'm talking about. Specifically that one. Yeah. Asking, should I take this? Do I need this? And so I like before colostrum was trendy, when we were in grad school, that was one of the, I think we read a few papers on colostrum for gastrointestinal health. And that's when I learned how therapeutic colostrum can be. Mm-hmm. And there actually is decent like science backing up things specifically for like gut barrier function, I think, and immune, like secretions in the gut.
There's good science backing the use of colostrum for different populations, for athletes, people with GI issues, people with immune system imbalances. Even there were some studies I read on it being used as a wound dressing.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff. But okay, to your point, I think this is the most important part to communicate about colostrum. Girl, I look at these ads that come up on my feed where people are like, my dietitian prescribed colostrum, and I just dry scoop it into my mouth like a maniac every morning before I go to the gym. Like, I don't know how people call it, dry scooping or like dry something. Andrew does it sometimes with protein powder. He just
I've
comes in and he like,
never, that sounds horrible.
yeah. Do you remember like when we were in school, not grad school, we had, at NTA, we would open the capsules sometimes to like taste the powder, and it's like by
Yeah.
mistake, you just like suck a little into the back of your throat and then you cough out like a dragon, like magnesium or whatever. Ugh. Anyway, the claims on these ads are so extreme, like hair growth, hair thickening, skin health, nails growing, bigger butt, nicer skin. Like, it's like the gamut of claims. So I emailed the company and I was like, hey, I mean, I wasn't like, hey, I'm a research based copywriter who's, writing a piece about this, but I was like, I'm seeing these claims in your ads and I'm just curious. I see you have a research tab on your site, but none of the papers in this research tab are leading anywhere where I can see these claims in humans. Every claim, and again, we're not saying the name, but if you've been on social media or if you've been in wellness for half of a split second, you're probably familiar with this company making these amazing claims with, I will say, a radically impressive marketing campaign around colostrum. They're all based on this very small, was a survey study of people taking this colostrum or not, right? So it was like, and I actually, every time I try to find this study, I have trouble finding it. I'll put it in the show notes. But I like went through it really, like methodically for the work we were doing on colostrum. And it's just, it's like basically you pull 500, I can't even remember the amount of people. That's terrible. I should
Right.
try to find this. It's like a small clinical trial, survey based, a couple
And
hundred
so
people.
survey-based like studies are very unreliable. Like I
Yeah,
feel
it
like
was,
people should know that. It's because you're just judging it based on the person, what they're reporting to you, kind of their, I guess, active like thoughts about it, and then like whether they even remember accurately. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because
or
we
maybe
forget
they
things.
increased protein in their diet as a whole, or they started
Right.
exercising, or they were drinking more. Who knows? Like what, there were
Yeah.
no controls,
Hmm.
for other inputs. So it's a very hyped up marketing campaign for a substance though that does have some really positive effects. Like if you are an athlete and you're training really hard, colostrum is something to check
Yes.
out to make part of your regimen. If you are somebody who is dealing with GI issues, colostrum is something to check out.
Hmm.
You have an immune imbalance, like an autoimmune disease or some type of immune mediated symptoms, it might be something to check out. So there is good research backing a lot of benefit for colostrum, but you're not gonna like heal. You can't, like there was one ad I saw, it was like, I used to take collagen, taurine, but like all these different things, and now I just take colostrum. It's like, no, that's not, those two
Yeah.
things are different. Like things do different things. Like
Right.
interventions have different impacts in the body. So I think to me it kind of like harkens back to this, the like overarching question, I mean for every episode, but for this one I thought about it a lot, which is like, why do we have these trendy interventions and supplements in the first place? Like how does that happen? You
Hmm.
see clinicians, some of them, not all, people, clinicians, general public, they jump on taking these certain substances. Is it because like you have a PubMed alert set for a certain research group or a certain topic, and all of a sudden there's this like new glut of research coming out because this like creatine is probably the most researched substance on earth? You get all this cool information in the research literature. Is that why a topic is trending? It's like, no, a topic is maybe one in a million. A topic is trending because people who are making money off of that substance or topic are marketing it.
Hmm.
9.9 times out of 10, that is how it goes. So that doesn't mean that it's not good for you. That doesn't mean it's not good. And it doesn't mean that it's not for you either, right? It's like there's all
Right.
these categories. Um, but I think that's the overarching thing to keep in mind. And colostrum is a perfect example. It's like, same with methylene blue. Maybe it is great for you. And in
Right.
certain circumstances, colostrum the same. But like if you think it's going to regrow your hair, book
Yeah.
a ticket to Turkey and get a hair plug. that's that's how that's actually going to happen, not from colostrum.
Right. And with colostrum too, like the trendy one is so expensive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So expensive. You can find a high quality colostrum for like a fraction of the price. I think there's one on iHerb for like $15
Yeah.
versus $100 for like the trendy product. And so that's going to work exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
it's going to do the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
You did a bunch of research on this, Hannah, like looking for studies in humans to back the claims that we were seeing. And
Yeah, just to see, like, we know GI stuff, yes, like that is good science. But then for like healing acne, skin health, regrowing your hair, there's very little
mm-hmm.
evidence supporting that. I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. Like, you could be like, yeah, I want to try this, pay $15 for this good quality supplement. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
not the investment of $100. Take it regularly. I will say
Apricot
that,
flavor.
like, sorry, what'd you say?
Apricot flavored. That's the one I keep seeing. It's a new like sun-kissed apricot flavor.
Apricot. Yeah. There are, it could be that through like affecting your gut health, your microbiome, your gut barrier integrity, in then you see benefits in skin health or hair health or nutrient absorption. I mean, sure, like
Yeah.
that's a thing. But as far as like people taking it specifically to grow their hair or to protect their skin, there's not a whole lot. I think
Very sparse. And I don't think any
mostly are
human studies really.
right. It's mostly like in vitro, like test tube kind of or cell studies.
Yeah.
So it
Mouse
is a
hair.
really super nutrient rich
Yeah.
product. Like it has, it's full of zinc. It has
Immunoglobulins.
lactoferrin,
Yeah.
which is an anti-inflammatory compound. And lactoferrin, might be helpful for people with acne or like inflammatory skin, conditions. It has
Mm-hmm.
vitamin E. It has the immunoglobulins, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
which is important for immune function, B vitamins. So yeah, it's got a bunch of stuff that's really great for your body and health,
We can
for
link to
sure.
that. There's like a profile breakdown paper we can link in the
Mhm.
notes. And I will do my due diligence. I should have done it before we got on to find that one clinical trial for that particular brand. And we can link that
It's
in the show
hard to
notes. It
find.
is
It's like
hard to
hidden in the back end of their website or so. I don't know.
Well, they
Yeah, how to.
emailed me the link. I couldn't find it on the website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I emailed them back and I was like, is this the only study that you're basing all this on? And then that was it. I never heard back from them again.
I'm surprised that they haven't, since they're so high profile, that no one's like kind of coming after them for those claims yet. Because that's, yeah,
It's like
kind of
writing a
surprising.
sales page with 100 citations. You may do your due diligence. There's like one person who's like,
Yeah.
did you know that citation 2 is in the wrong place? And you're like, thank you, rando on the internet, who's the only person on earth. It's like, no, I mean, nobody looks,
Yeah.
So, but yes, to your point, you can get colostrum that is not, I mean, I can't remember how much it was a container, but yeah, I remember
It's
looking at the
it's
price.
like 100 at least.
Gosh, dude.
So yeah, that's a huge markup.
Man.
Um,
I remember
so
getting colostrum from our farmer in Nevada City when he would wean his cows, like the calves
mhm,
from the cows. And we would get like quarts of this, like, colostrum is incredible. It was this like
it is.
yellow, it's not milk, it's like a
Right.
pre milk substance that animals make, goats.
It's called liquid gold.
Yeah, and it was like a
Yeah.
yellow, thick
Mhm.
substance. I drank a lot of it from him, but I think, he sold it for like $10 a quart or something,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
fresh.
Humans also make it, like if you're breastfeeding,
Yeah,
especially right when your baby is born, your
right.
body produces a lot of it, and yeah, they only need like a tiny bit. It's just the
Yeah.
tiniest amount, and it has these very nutrients and supportive properties, which is so cool. It's just a little.
But there was one other thing I was going to say about it. I see a lot of ads talking about how it's like an anti-bloating solution.
Mm-hmm.
Very little research. I bet for this, we did a project with colostrum. I bet we read, I don't know, close to 100 studies. We looked at a lot of
Mm-hmm.
studies. Not a lot of evidence to help bloating. Actually, some of what I read, I was like, it might increase bloating because it has prebiotics in it.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it does, there's a lot of evidence showing that it is really wonderful for the GI, like especially the gut barrier, the
Right.
epithelial barrier. But yeah, the bloating, and there's a lot of bloating claims. I think because so many people deal with bloating as an issue, they're
Hmm.
really targeting that. And I think in that clinical trial, they showed maybe, like some decrease in bloating based on the
Hmm.
surveys they got back. But yeah, when you look at the constituents, they're like very specific, unique prebiotics. In my mind, I'm like, if you tend toward bloating, it might actually make it worse. So,
Possibly, yeah.
something to keep in mind about colostrum.
Cool. Do
Okay.
you want to talk about collagen and collagen powder, cottage cheese?
Oh my God, the cottage cheese, everything. I actually am a huge, I can talk a little bit about bias here, a huge fan of, like, I would swim my way through a delicious pool of cottage cheese with my mouth open and just, I love it. There is, we kind of were talking about like protein trend. Everybody needs more protein. And so then, of course, you lead into, seeing these reels like flatbread made with like cottage cheese and
Hmm.
egg, and cottage cheese quick overnight oats, cottage cheese
Yeah.
iced cream, like cottage cheese. I know that people have seen that, because it is a high protein, low fat dairy source. And collagen, we're just kind of throwing in there. We can just hit a little bit on all of this because it's another protein source, although an incomplete form of protein, which people are, I can just hear in listeners' minds like collagen is an incomplete form of protein. It's like, yes, it is.
It is.
We're aware. Although it does still add to your daily total amount of protein, even though it is not contain every amino acid,
Right.
for a complete protein. There are specific benefits to collagen. So overall, I mean, Hannah, I'm curious to hear, like, I mean, I know you've looked at this research a lot
Hmm.
too. We've taught it through the sports nutrition class that I help out with at UWS. There's this like thing that you hear when you start getting into nutrition where it's like everybody, especially in the States, is overeating protein.
Hmm.
That like trope comes down over and over and over. And so I think part of it is to like push people toward like plant based, which that's a whole other episode. Like plant
Yeah.
based to me is fantastic. Awesome. Yes. Base your diet on plants. Wonderful. But when you start to practice, or when I did, I wonder if you have this experience and you look at people's food journals, you're like, there's actually not enough protein in. I actually, the only people I saw eat enough protein were my like protein conscious dudes in
Hmm.
practice. And there weren't many of them in my practice. I mainly saw sick women, like women with autoimmune disease. I cannot remember one. And I had a pretty robust practice that was eating enough
Yeah.
protein.
Yeah, it's hard. You have to be really intentional. And especially if you're like eating out, I feel like if you're plant based in the form of veganism, like, which I think that those terms are used kind of interchangeably. To me,
Yeah.
they're different because,
Yeah.
like you said, plant based just means like you eat a lot of like plant foods, like a variety of plant foods. That doesn't mean you don't eat animal foods too. It's just like you want to focus on a lot of plant foods. But here, where I live, like plant based means like you're vegan.
Yeah.
And so if you go to a cafe or a restaurant, you look at the menu, they have like jackfruit tacos, or I
Yeah.
don't know, like there's very
Tempeh,
sometimes tempeh.
chicken
That's
tempeh.
hard, like not even a lot. And
Mm,
if you get a tempeh dish, it's like one piece of tempeh, and I'm like,
right.
how much protein is actually in this whole thing, and that's fine. But if you're basing your whole diet for a long time on that, you really have to be mindful, like, are you actually getting enough protein in? And
Hmm.
I do think you do hear that, like in the United States, like we overeat protein, like that's all, it's way too much. But then what is that compared to? Like there are a lot of other, cultures who eat less protein than us, and some of that has to do with just what's available,
Hmm.
or financially available. Like
Yeah.
protein is expensive, like animal sources of protein are expensive, and like we forget that here sometimes because we have these, huge animal operations, which
Hmm.
also are extremely problematic. And that could be a whole other episode. I actually know a great farmer who would be wonderful to
Oh,
bring on to
yes.
talk about that. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm just saying that, like, that's something you hear, and then people are afraid of protein. But then when you look at the research on like aging and longevity, protein
Hmm.
is super critical. I guess mostly muscle mass is critical, right? And so making sure
Yeah.
whatever type of protein, whether it be plant protein or animal protein, you are getting enough to build muscle and not going into like a negative muscle balance where you're losing muscle, especially after what the age of like 40. Is it
Girl, a
40 or
lot of
45?
women, the sarcopenia research, it begins in our 20s. Like it's women are
Whoa.
like especially susceptible to muscle loss compared to
Yeah.
men. I mean, part of it is just like, okay, yes, hormonally testosterone is like
Mhm.
more conducive to building muscle.
Right.
But yeah,
But then
there's
after,
a
yeah, after you have kids too, it probably you're depleting,
yeah, it changes because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, all kinds of things change. That conversation is so fascinating. It would be very cool to have somebody on, like Mighty Nelson, if he wants to come back on. I know enough about it to like explain the overview, which is like there is tons of information on the health span of humans, which means like
Mhm.
how long we can live and still function day to day versus the like lifespan, which is just the number that you are when you die,
Mhm.
irregardless of is it just regardless? I think irregardless is not.
I don't know,
I
actually.
just
I've
grammar policed myself. I think it's regardless of like
regardless. Yeah.
you could be in a like totally disabled, but if you live to be, 110, that is still your lifespan. So what most of like general consensus of people who really understand this and also what you do see in the research is you really extend your health span, your functionality by keeping muscle on your body. The way that you do that is with protein intake and resistance training.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
what leads to muscle protein synthesis. Together, amazing. Even separate though, like let's say you get hurt and you can't pick up weights. You should
Mhm.
still eat enough protein to maintain your lean mass. That's really
Mhm.
important. Vice versa. Like sometimes I'm like such a girl dinner bitch, basic bitch. Like I'm like, if Andrew's not home, I'm gonna have pasta and cheese and like tea for dinner. That's it. So maybe not intaking the amount of protein I need, but I will always pick up some heavy weights, which will also stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So there's like this whole dance where it's like for health span, you need that muscle mass. Protein intake supports that. For lifespan, though, they've seen that like specific
Mhm.
amino acids can actually like affect your lifespan. So maybe you do live longer if you
Mhm.
decrease calories, number one, but
Yes.
certain amino acids, I think like methionine is the kind of main culprit versus leucine, like that balance gets off in people. This is a whole other
Yeah.
episode really. This is just the overview that if you decrease the amount of those amino acids you do tend to live longer, but then you have to start to see like, okay, well, do you want to live longer and like be in a bed, or do you want to live maybe a little shorter, maybe not? I mean, it's really up in the air. A lot of it is rodent
Yeah.
studies, and like live a functional life.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
most people who've worked in hospitals, I've talked to Nicole Seal about this quite a bit, our friend who's becoming a nurse practitioner. So smart. It'd be so great to have her on. Where you go, she's like going in hospitals and working with people, and she's like, you want a health span. Believe me, that is much more important than a like a lifespan, the age. So generally it is, if you've never calculated how much protein you eat every day and you're
Mhm.
kind of not conscious of it, like I feel like a lot of women particularly, although this trend is changing, which is why we're talking about it, and then specifically women who have an autoimmune disease, and I have some theories about why, they are under eating protein. And as a macronutrient, not only is it stimulating and then
Mhm.
directly contributing to muscle protein synthesis, it also is what rebuilds your structures. So if you have leaky gut, guess
Mhm.
what?
You need
you, yeah,
protein.
you have to have enough
If your
protein.
hair is falling out, you need protein.
Your nails
Yeah.
are thin and crappy, your skin, whatever. Yeah, you have to have enough protein. And you see this. I mean, this is researched. We've read paper after paper after paper about this, but then also, I've seen it clinically, I've seen it personally. It's important. So if you are that person, track the amount of protein you eat and just see like what is your starting point. The FDA is, I think, 0.8 grams per kilogram per day.
Mhm.
You can go into the like argument around like how that was determined. The type of way that that was determined is like not a very accurate way of determining protein, and
Yeah.
we actually
You
need
need more.
like 1.2 to 1.5 gram per kilogram, I think, is like the baseline, and then
Mhm.
you go up from there based on what your goals are. um, I'll tell you, we shoot for a gram per pound per day. So I weigh about 160 pounds. I try to eat 160 grams protein per day. Does it always happen? No, it does
Holy
not.
shit. How do you do it? Okay, so I have to say, with this
Cottage
trend,
cheese.
the thing that I run into, I'm like, how can we actually eat this much protein? Like coming from someone who's very aware of like protein needs and that we do need more than we've probably been eating as especially as women.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm like, how you have to like I've seen these great memes where it's like trying to calculate the amount of protein I need per day or like
It's like
quit my
equations.
day job so I could schedule my protein intake or something ridiculous because it is hard to get that much in. You have to be very you have to plan it
Yeah, you have
basically.
to just
You have to plan it out.
dude, okay, so here's my hypothesis, okay, is that particularly people who have like some type of like, even if it's like a, kind of a preclinical, like not diagnosed issue, their digestion might not be very strong. Their
Mhm.
metabolism might be like not as peak as it could be. Protein is the most satisfying food. It's
Mhm.
satiating. Those calories are very satiating. So you eat some and you're like, okay. Like if you look at studies where people are eating like 2 grams per pound a day, 3 grams per pound a day, like there's
Mhm.
some studies where they're like super loading to see like what happens to the kidneys. Postscript, nothing. If you have healthy kidneys,
Yeah, kidneys are
your
fine.
kidneys are
Yeah.
totally fine, but you do have to watch out for gut health. Like that's where the
Mhm.
plant based comes in. You have to have enough fiber. um they are like sick to death of protein, these people,
Yeah.
because they're so satiated. So then you pair that with somebody who might have a little bit of like a GI disturbance. They probably get heartburn, they can't digest it very well, they're so satiated. Of course you avoid it. It's kind of hard to digest, like hard to
Yeah.
like, that's my guess about why people tend to avoid it. And then also we have just the evolutionary, like flip in our brain that's like eat sweet foods, eat like carbohydrates, eat
Mhm.
like if you can find fat, get it. And so we kind of tend to avoid that macronutrient.
Yeah.
That's my guess
Yeah.
about why it happens. But you just have to like, yeah, plan like 3 meals per day and snacks. Like
Mhm.
I love soy. People should listen to our
That's
soy
actually been my
episode.
favorite breakfast lately. Is like high protein tofu, like lightly
Mm-hmm.
saute it with like turmeric and black
Mm,
pepper, and
yes.
then I make this like make flatbread for myself. It's gluten free, and I just cook it fresh like throughout the week.
Yum.
And so I have it with that and like some like kimchi or vegetables. It's so fast and easy, and I could eat it. I do eat it every day. I could eat
What
it
is
every
your
day.
flatbread bread recipe?
It's I use millet flour, and then psyllium husk, tapioca starch, yogurt, olive oil. You like mix. It's technically like kind of supposed to replace like a pita bread or maybe like a more like a naan because it doesn't quite puff up like pita does.
Mm.
But I just you cook it in a hot skillet with no oil.
Would
It's
you
so good.
send me that and we'll post
It's
it in the show
so
notes?
yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
I
yeah,
totally want that. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you just basically have to think like, okay, if you're going to eat 3 meals per day, if you can get in 40 grams in a meal, that's 120 grams. I
Hmm.
think of it for me as being 160. Then I need to have another 40 grams per day. If I have two 20-gram snacks, that's it. But yeah,
Now, are you sorry?
you
Are
just go.
you doing that for ideal weight or your current weight?
For
Like if you were
current
selling
weight is the
current weight.
easiest. I mean, there's all kinds of caveats about this
Yeah.
and people who like really research protein and know this.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just do it based on current weight. And then, the amazing thing that happens, and you see this in the research literature, Andrew and I have tracked this with photos, you start to gain weight
Mhm.
on the scale, you're heavier. And then if you look at yourself, if you're eating that amount of protein and you're picking up some weight, which is, I mean, I pick up lightweight compared to most people, but for me, heavyweight, you start to get smaller because you
Mhm.
do start to recomp your body where your muscle starts to increase and your fat starts to decrease. But on the scale, people kind of freak out. And I think
Right.
probably that also happens with women too, where there's like the bridge period where you have more muscle and you still have more fat tissue and like your clothes are kind of tight and you're like, what is happening? It's like you're getting stronger. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's lovely. But people don't like that feeling because they don't like to feel big in their body. And I'm like, get big.
Right. Right.
You're not going to break a hip. You're going to, like keep your bones healthier as you age. So I kind of am into the trend of women like being, and people generally like the protein trend and doing the cottage cheese, collagen. God, do we want
Yeah.
to Do we have time to even touch on
I don't
collagen?
I
It's
don't know if we have enough time, but it's a useful supplement, I think. I think it's a little hyped up
but yeah.
for sure. And it's kind of like colostrum, where it's like it will do this and this and this, and there
Regrow
is
your arm. No.
right.
Yeah.
It does help with skin health. There is pretty
Pretty
good.
convincing
Yeah.
research.
That's why I started taking, because I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this has convinced me, like I'm gonna take this and not age. That's my
Yeah,
goal.
it's I
Yeah.
mean, the elasticity, the hydration of skin, I think those are like the two markers that I see most in the
Mhm.
research. There's like impressive effect sizes. Um, we should do a whole episode on collagen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
There's a whole like industry though. I'm going to show this because this is what Andrew has gotten into because it has these types of peptides in it called bioactive collagen
Mhm.
peptides. And
Mhm.
so for this episode, I was like, what is that? There is research on this showing effectiveness, but there's no research that I could find that compared bioactive collagen to just regular collagen. So it's
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, they're seeing benefit, but it's like doesn't look that much different than just taking collagen.
Mm.
Also, BT dubs, guys. You could just go to the butcher and get knuckle bones and marrow bones, sure,
Yeah.
and make broth. I mean, that is the OG, right? You
Mhm.
eat the whole animal. That's where the collagen comes from. So, I mean, yeah, you can supplement it, but like that is, we still make broth here pretty regularly. You know, when you make something and then it cools and it's like
Yeah,
jelly.
incorporate it into your diet that way.
Yeah,
It's great.
you can make soup.
I like I had this thought when we were talking about women not eating enough protein, just like in general, and your theories of why. But I remembered back to like one of my very, very first nutrition clients when I was super new and like nervous and, would get like just
So nervous.
start
Yes.
sweating before like I would have to have an appointment with somebody. And I looked at her food journal and she wasn't eating any protein, like at all,
Yeah.
like none. It was just potatoes, pasta, like that
Yeah.
was all. And her goal was like to lose fat mass and everything. And back then I knew not nearly what I know now about protein and body composition, but I was like, oh damn, you are not eating any protein.
Yeah.
And she said, yes, I am. And I was like, oh, what is your protein source? And she just said potatoes. And she said it with such confidence that I had this incredible wave of like self doubt. And I was just like, oh, okay, great.
That is the most real clinical story I've ever heard where you're new and you're like, shit, maybe I've totally
Yeah.
misunderstood this.
Like Googling potatoes, I was like, potatoes is a protein source. Like, how did I miss this?
Do you know, it's an important point though that you are kind of like bringing up, which is we say like a protein source. There are protein dominant foods and there are of course other foods that protein isn't
Right.
the dominant macronutrient. I mean, I think a banana contains some protein,
Yeah.
but like
Broccoli has like 2 grams of protein or something,
right.
like,
So
yeah.
when we're talking about like protein, it's like foods that's the dominant caloric macronutrient. It's an interesting conversation too, because when you start to get into like really the bare bones, it's like eggs are not gram for gram, like or calorie for calorie, excuse me, protein dominant because
Mhm.
fat has 9 calories per gram. Protein
Yeah.
has 4. So if you start to look calorically, it's like, oh wow, okay.
Like peanut butter. Peanut butter is not a protein source.
Yeah,
It's a fat source.
it's
It
fat
has
dominant.
protein.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It's nuts are fat dominant. So you have to start thinking like fish. I love tinned fish, meat. It's why cottage cheese is,
Mhm.
going crazy. Low fat yogurt. I know people are going to lose their minds. It's like, yeah, we get Nancy's low fat yogurt. It's like, it's a good way
Mhm.
to increase your protein and not take in so much fat. But if you want to gain fat, yes, you eat more fat because it is a calorically dense macronutrient that the whole like fat doesn't make you fat. It's like, yeah, it does. Anything will make you fat if you increase the amount of calories that are coming in versus the amount of calories that are going out. That is
Right.
also a whole other episode.
Oh yeah, that's a great episode.
Okay. We did what is it called in Hawaii? A poo-poo platter. That's what this episode is. Yeah. It's like ginger, Kahlua pork. It's like a sample platter.
Okay,
A poo-poo
cool.
platter.
So yeah, ta-da. All right. We would love to hear y'all's feedback. Please leave us a rating or review. That's very helpful for us to see what you're feeling. If you hate it, please let us know.
Yeah.
If you like it, tell us why. Thank you for listening.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you so
like
much.
it. I'm going to vote for this kind of episode. Cool, Hannah. Okay, I'll see you soon. We'll talk about this crazy movie on Netflix, Apple Cider
Okay.
Vinegar.
Sounds good. Bye.